With Iowa Central. On behalf of the Greater Fort Dodge Growth Alliance, welcome to our end of session Eggs and Issues. Thank you for coming and thanks for watching. So what we'll do is we'll ask these senators and rep to make some opening comments, what their thoughts were of the session, and then we'll open it up for questions. Thank you very much. Who would like to go first?
Go ahead.
All right. Session finished up 3 weeks late, but we had a very productive session, I feel. In human resources, we did get some priorities passed through and signed by the governor. I'm not going to talk about the tax bill because I think Senator Kreinbrink will want to talk about that. But as part of the tax bill, one of the priorities we were working on in human resources was parity for mental health visits with telehealth visits. So meaning if you have a mental health visit in person or via telehealth, it will be reimbursed at the same rate. What that means is we have more access to mental health providers now in Iowa because they can actually be outside of the state and providing those services. We found that telehealth was a huge benefit during COVID when people couldn't leave their houses. And we've also found that some mental health visits are easier for patients when they can do them from home. So that was a big win for Iowa. One of the second things that we passed through human resources that we've been working on for a couple of years is addressing the child care cliff effect. That's when people who are getting child care assistance, which is based on need, they would get to a certain point in their income level and they would fall off the benefit cliff. So average child care for a parent with 2 children is about $1,500 a month, although I did hear last weekend one family was paying $2,000 a month for 2 kids. So if a person was working and took a moderate raise or promotion, they may get $100, maybe $200 more a month, but they would lose $1,500 a month in child care benefits. So what this does is it's a graduated exit ramp, and the more you make, you would just take a step up. And what that means is you would have a bigger copay, bigger part of the child care cost, and then finally, when you made enough money, you would exit, and hopefully the family will be independent at that point. And so one thing that does is it lets Iowans progress and be independent, but then also hopefully what we're trying to do is break that cycle of poverty. So those are 2 big things that we passed this year that I'm very proud of.
Yeah, on that point, it was I think 2021 is going to go down as one of the most productive years probably in our generation and for a long time. And it was just incredible. One piece of legislation after the other. It seemed like a lot of people were on the same page in both chambers on a lot of issues. From my perspective, being on the first year, I thought it was really neat. I can remember when Senator Kreinbrink first ran. A big issue for him that really resonated with him was having a good fiscal responsibility and getting the budget in order. That was what drove him into this, I don't want to speak for him, but that's the way it seemed to me, the thing that drove him. And so this was a big year for him to get some tax relief, and so he's been working so hard on that, and Ann's been working really hard on child care, and so she had a really good year with that legislation, and she's been pushing through. My representative Phil Thompson, he got into office really focused on rural EMS, and that was such a great bill that he's been passionate about, and so you just look across the room and everybody had different issues that drove them into public service, and a lot of them were able to hit home runs this year on those issues. So that to me was the overarching theme of the year, and just a lot of success with that. For me in particular, in the Ag Committee, we we added liability protections for farmers, so when they bring people onto their farm, and if there's a accident with an animal or something, the farmer can't get sued for frivolous lawsuits due to that. But of course, the big one was the locker bill. COVID revealed a big weakness in our economy, and that is our meat production. And our locker bill begins to address that. There's two components to it. There's an educational component and a fiscal component. The fiscal component, there's $750,000 that existing lockers can tap into to expand their facilities and increase their capacity. But the part that I'm personally most excited about is the educational component. By the end of the year, a task force is going to have to come back to the state of Iowa with suggestions on curriculum for community colleges to use and how many community colleges should be looking into having this educational option for young people. So I can't wait to see what that task force brings back. Right now we're working on rules and regulations in regards to how lockers can apply for these grants. So I expect to see that in the Rules Committee, which I serve on in August. I think I'll save some of the unfinished business for my closing comments. So thank you.
Well, good. I just thank you for having us again, the Growth Alliance and Iowa Community College. I just wanted to expand a little bit on what I'm still searching for a word in my brain here that I'm trying to get down. Maybe Jesse and Ann will help me. But anytime we're reducing tort reform or reducing the liability, I guess is probably the word I'm looking for, as he mentioned, coming onto a farm and maybe a class. If Jesse had cattle and the class comes out and they visit his farm and they use that as an educational experience, that's what he's kind of talking about in those types of liability. But if there's negligence involved and the farmer lets the kids in with the bulls, and they run them around, the farmer is still liable. So it's negligent on the farmer's part to put those students in with the bull, whereas if they're properly penned and everything, but the kid climbs the fence and goes in there when he's not supposed to, those are the type of things I think that you're talking about. So it doesn't eliminate, all the liability for the farmers. I think we have to be clear with that. Anything that we do that reduces tort, which is the lawsuits, those, if there's still negligence involved, that can be proved in the court of law. That does not take the liability away from the doctor or the farmer or anybody else involved. So I think that's important to kind of put out there too. Ann mentioned it, and so did Jesse a little bit, and we'll just be on first names if that's okay. This was a big year. This was a monumental year for tax reform in the state of Iowa. We took mental health off of property taxes. We talk about lowering the levy. Well, we took the levy away. So now on your property taxes with your own home or farmland or any property that you actually own, physical property that you pay property taxes on, that levy will be going away. And then that money that was normally created for mental health in the state of Iowa will be coming from the general fund. Plus we added an additional $10 million on top of what normally has gone to mental health. One of the reasons why I know I've had this discussion with Mike, on his show and other places, they say, well, give more money to mental health, give more money to mental health. It's almost like giving more money to corrections, giving more money to corrections. Well, if you give 50 million or 100 million, we can give a whole lot of money, but if that entity isn't ready for that money or they can't find employees or counselors or enough places to spend the money that would be productive, they end up spending it on things that aren't productive. So when a lot of times we'll hear when people want more money, they don't want a whole slug of it. They just want an additional amount, and they want that amount to increase so that they can monumentally, over a period of time, they can get things moving in the right direction. And then, of course, if it's not working, then we can pull that money back and go a different route that we think is working. So money doesn't solve all problems. We've got employment problems as well. We've got businesses out there that are hungry for workers and counselors, and we're starving for psychologists and psychiatrists and doctors in general. We're doing a lot of different things to try to pull the new people into our district. We're not just floating money out there. We're trying to help with forgivable loans. We're trying to get these low or high need jobs filled in a lot of different ways. Also, another thing that was in that tax bill, I think that's important to a lot of people, is we call it the death tax or inheritance tax. And I think that's great for small business owners, farmers, when they've already paid taxes on everything that they've purchased. And now when they pass away, the next generation has to pay a 20 or 30% tax just because they inherited it. That's like a double tax. It's almost like getting taxed twice on your Social Security, or those type of things. And so this, in the state of Iowa anyway, I know nationally the current administration, I think, wants to raise or keep that death tax in place, but the state of Iowa is actually, over the next 3 years, is going to get rid of that death tax or inheritance tax. We also eliminated triggers. What I mean by that is in 2008, when now Congressman Feenster brokered a deal with the House and the governor to cut our taxes, our income taxes, there were triggers put in there that if the state grew by so many percent and we have so much revenue coming into the state of Iowa, that we would be allowed the state revenue, tax revenue, people would be able to lower our taxes or lower that upper rate down and get everyone that's here that's paying taxes a tax break in the state of Iowa. Now, we don't have charge of the federal, but we're talking about the state of Iowa. So we were a millimeter away, maybe a multi-millimeter away from hitting those triggers. So in this tax bill, we eliminated those triggers, and we'll start seeing our tax breaks on our state income taxes start to come down in 2023. Also, it's good news, and you might say, well, how are we going to pay for all this? Because it's being paid for a different way right now. Ending on June 30th, we are looking at a substantial surplus in our budget, somewhere in the means of about $500 million. So that $500 million in 5 short years. 5 years ago, we were borrowing $140 million from the rainy day fund. So you can see, even with tough farming prices and economy, we have been fiscally responsible, and I would stand up and argue or debate that with anybody, that this caucus, both the House and the Senate, are very, very fiscally responsible, and that is a great thing when you're talking about budgets.
Thank you very much, Senator. We have one question that's been submitted. It's pretty general, but I think it kind of follows what you've all said. But they asked specifically, what do you see as your biggest accomplishment this session? What is your biggest accomplishment?
I'm going to say those two things that I talked about in my opening was the mental health, telehealth parity, and the child care cliff. One more thing, I've introduced 5 bills to address child care. The second thing that was passed in the HHS, the Health and Human Service budget, we don't like to put a lot of policy on budget bills, but sometimes that does happen. One of the things we did was increase the child care assistance provider rates, because you can give someone a benefit like child care assistance, but if the provider will not accept it because they're being reimbursed too low, it doesn't help. So we did that as well. Those two
Thank you.
things.
Senator Green?
Well, I would say the two highlight moments that I'll never forget was pushing the yes button on constitutional carry. That was a special moment for me, and there were so many of my constituents that were passionate about that. The other highlight moment I'll never forget was the tax bill. It just showed that just having fiscal responsibility and just paying close attention, just having that accountable mindset in every part of the budget is so important, and to give the taxpayers a little bit back just means a lot. It just shows how much hard work, how many years went into this type of thinking and budgeting to come to this moment. Then, of course, the locker bill is bipartisan, just common sense bill that came out, and it was just incredible how fast it came out of the House when they got it moving, and then we just had a few conversations in the Senate, and came right out of the Senate. And you don't see efficiency like that in government very often. And so since session's been out, it's been fun to go around and see how some of these lockers are sitting right now, to see some of their problems, and I think we have some common sense solutions yet to work on. But those would be the big highlight moments for me.
Yeah, I think, when we're sitting there, if all of you had a chance to sit in our seats down there, either in the House or the Senate, and listen to the debate that goes on, if you wouldn't know better, we are in the worst state out of the 50 states. We get tormented. I mean, we can take it because we're all adults, but we get told how we're going to take Iowa to the basement. And 4 years ago when we passed the tax bill the first time, it was said that we are now on a bobsled to bankruptcy. And what's happened is 4 years later we have a $500 million surplus. And so the talking points that the other side is using are old, and they're tired, and they're wrong all the time. But they still use those same talking points. So if you're sitting in our seats and you hear doom and gloom every single day, that's all we hear. Every day is how bad a job that the Republicans are doing in the House, the Senate, and the governor. But yet on the outside, we're voted the #1 state in about every area you can be voted on as the #1 state in the United States of America, to handle a financial situation during a pandemic, to come out of a pandemic, #1 place to live, grow, and raise a family. I mean, this has all happened in the last 2 or 3 years. Instead of banging on how bad Iowa is, we should be appreciating how great our state is. If we're going to say all these negative things and you wonder why people aren't moving here, all you got to do is listen to a day in the Senate or the House and listen to the Democrats gripe about how bad a state this is. I wouldn't come either if I listened to that. But everything that we've done over the last 4 or 5 years, our state is in the greatest financial situation it could ever be in. We have jobs flying out of our ears that people can come and fill. We have industry that's looking to expand, and so we need to lower our corporate tax rates a little bit and not give away the farm when we try to attract businesses and corporations here. So we still have work to do, but I'm just proud. I'm not on a lot of policy committees, so I'm basically in charge of the state's money in the state or in the Senate side, and I'm just so proud that we can look at where Iowa's at right now, and we have a lot to be thankful for. And also, I think our governor has done a beautiful job in the balancing of the COVID as well as financial and getting our state back to work in a reasonable time. So she deserves a lot of credit as well, even though I'm not on Facebook very often, but I hear on Facebook and other social media she gets beaten up all the time. But that's all part of that same old, tired, worn out rhetoric that we hear every single day. And I will tell you that will continue, but I know you have 3 people up here that will never fold to that rhetoric.
Thank you very much. Kind of a good segue into the next question is, what do you see, each of you, as your top 1 or 2 or 3 priorities, not only in policy but funding next year? What are the priorities you see facing Iowa, and what are your priorities? So,
One of you guys start this time.
Tim, you want to start?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a few things that stick out right away, and a couple of these I didn't really quite realize until the end of session that are issues. And any time that I see that the taxpayer is getting taken advantage of, it just gets under my skin, and that's what I see with the bottle bill. It's just obvious that the taxpayer is getting taken advantage of. It's gone on for too long. I think it's pretty ridiculous if we can't get a bill out of the chamber next year and out of on the governor's desk. It could be up to $100 million that is unaccounted for. So every time I see a pop can go in the trash can, I get mad, and so we need to fix that. The second thing is we have really high unemployment fraud. To put this in perspective, California has about $11 billion in unemployment fraud. A state that's doing really good is Colorado. They have 6.5 million. That's a pretty low number. But Iowa's sitting about 5.7 billion in overpayments. So we need to button this up, and it's a matter of updating our computer systems, is my understanding. Some of our computer systems date back to the 1970s as far as trying to keep track of some of this stuff. So that's one area I want to focus on. Also, the other one would be SNAP food assistance reform. We passed out of the Senate a bill that would make it illegal to have more than 3 or more EBT cards. That's a fairly common sense bill that I believe in the past even many Democrats voted for as well. And so we need to work on that for next year. Also, right now we have about 10% fraud rate in SNAP benefits. To put that in perspective, about 2% of that is people that should be getting benefits that's not getting benefits. And about 8% of that is people that are receiving too many benefits and using the system. So every year that number goes up about 1%. And so it's just obvious that that number, I think, is going to keep increasing unless we do something. And so I think those are 3 obvious bills that the taxpayer, I believe, demands an answer for and action, and I hope we get action. The last thing would be I want to build off the locker bill. I want to add once we see how many community colleges are going to be having classes and opportunities for people to get educated in that field, I'd like to see like a high school apprenticeship program to where they can build up working hours, and once they meet a certain standard that they get a free community college education when it comes to meat processing. I think it's common sense. I think the Lockers really want it, and it would be a great benefit to rural Iowa. So,
Thanks. I have to say that my granddaughter would probably be more worried about the pop can tab for the Ronald McDonald House than she probably is about the actual can itself. She's into collecting those now, and it's kind of interesting. All she does is looks through the cans and makes sure that that tab's in another place. So, but yeah, it's as far as the future goes for Iowa. Nationally, we see a lot of things happening that are trickling down into our state. We addressed a couple of them this year in the education committee. We've got some curriculum out there that is trying to sneak into our classrooms. I don't know if it's sneaking in or it's just rushing in. Whichever it is, it's not good. And so we've got some work ahead of us there to try to get that put into place. If that continues, we have a lot of tax-paying parents of students that deserve the state to pay for their taxes. And if we can't stop some of this, those parents are going to be looking for alternative ways to educate their children. And I honestly believe it's still the state's job to educate them if we can't curtail some of the things that are going into the classroom. And all you have to do is just Google a couple things on what Ames did during Black Lives Matter week. And I think the House actually did a oversight committee on that, and Ames administration wasn't backing down. I mean, they want to keep going with it. And those parents in those districts that this is going to happen or has been happening in need alternatives. And it's our job to give them alternatives. So for me, it's a great segue into vouchers or anything else, because we have to have some way that these parents can afford to send their kids into classrooms that are teaching reading, writing, and the arithmetic, because we are falling further behind there as well. So I think that's going to be an issue that we're going to be talking about, freedom of speech on our campuses. I think that's, we've been on that for a couple of years. 2 years ago, held a subcommittee on that and was guaranteed that it didn't happen in the state of Iowa at any of our region schools. And we've seen plenty of instances where this is not true, that there are people that are being silenced with conservative values and pro-life agendas. And so these things have to stop. We have to come up with some way to to hold the instructors and the professors accountable, and they need to answer to us, basically, because we fund the Regent colleges. So those type of things I think you'll see happening, along with continued fiscal responsibility. One of the reasons too, and I know some of you are probably thinking this, of the amount of COVID money and federal money that came into the state of Iowa in the last year and a half has been unbelievable. As you know, our governor actually turned $95 million of it back for school testing, for COVID school tests, and because our schools were open. And so I think that just the fiscal responsibility and continue forward, knowing that we're not going to get a lot of that one-time money every year, so that money is flowed into Iowa, but that money came from the federal government. It didn't come from the Iowa taxpayers or the people that support Iowa education and those type of things. So that's part of the reason also why we had to be a little bit more fiscally responsible, because we don't want to have this huge surplus and then all of a sudden we lose all this federal money and we have all of a sudden now we're in a bad spot. So we're very aware of that and planning for that as well. So those are a couple things that that I'll be working on and that we'll be watching, just to make sure that things are good for our constituents and our kids and our education and so on.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Representative Meyer?
Yes, thanks. There are a couple bills that we're working on, specifically as Chair of Human Resources, which is the Health Policy Committee, and my chair of the HHS budget, which funds policy. We co-sponsored a bill this year, which has already passed the Senate several times, for medical liability tort reform. This is an issue because we don't have enough providers in our state. We don't have enough physicians in our state. All of the states surrounding us, with the exception of Minnesota, have a non-economic damages cap. So non-economic damages are damages that are typically referred to as pain and suffering. There'll be no cap on economic damages, which would be loss of wages if you were injured, if you had a medical injury and your house needed to be retrofitted. Economic damages are uncapped. Punitive damages are uncapped. So punitive damages would be an egregious error. If someone went to surgery and your surgeon was under the influence of drugs or alcohol, that's uncapped. We want to put a $1 million non-economic pain and suffering cap. This would be the highest cap in the Midwest. Our surrounding states have between a $250,000 non-economic damage cap to a $750,000 non-economic damage cap. Why is this important? Because insurance companies that insure our nursing homes, our hospitals, our physicians, the liability insurance is out of control for them. When a new physician is looking, or an old physician is looking to relocate to the Midwest, if all else being equal, between Nebraska, South Dakota. If they see that difference, number one, in the money, they're probably going to pick another state. And number two, when you see the headlines of the large awards that are made for lawsuits, I'm not saying that what we were talking about earlier, what Senator was talking about earlier, this does not include negligence. Like I said, this is the pain and suffering part. So in order to attract physicians to Iowa, in order to keep our doctors that are being trained in Iowa staying here and not going to another state, in order to keep our hospitals and our nursing homes intact, and in order to keep our training programs intact. In 2020, the family practice training program in Cedar Rapids closed. That's 18 physicians that will now not be trained in Iowa. This year, in December, the Siouxland family practice was on the verge of closing. They got an emergency stay and some funding through Iowa Medical Society, but they were close to closing. This year we passed a Band-Aid bill, which we are funding residency programs to keep physicians being trained here, because we know if they're trained here, they have a better chance of staying here. Where these programs can apply for a one-to-one grant, so they still have skin in the game, but we're going to supplement them. Tort reform, medical tort reform is something I talked about before I was elected. I worked really hard on this bill just this year, and I plan to work hard on it going forward. I think it's a huge issue for our medical community. Not just that, it's a huge issue for our chambers. If we lose a hospital, if we lose medical services in any area, it's going to be really hard for our chambers to attract big businesses to Iowa if there's no medical services available for an hour to an hour and a half. So it's very important. Everyone is registered in favor of this except trial lawyers. So.
Okay, thank you. Anything else for the priority for next session, or?
You did talk about funding. We did, with HHS budget, do some record funding for mental health services and home-based habilitation services. We increased pediatric medical institutions for children. So I'd like to sustain that funding.
Thank you very much. Forward. We've got several other questions, so we'll try to keep our. I just need a clarification. Well, can you write it down and hand it in? We don't talk back, and we just don't. We'll let you do it. Anybody will do it. Well, no, if we let you do it, anybody will do it. The next question is, how will the reduction in ag property taxes help Fort Dodge? How will the reduction in ag property taxes help Fort Dodge?
Well, I'm not sure if you're just thinking that the ag is the only that receives a property tax. If you're a homeowner, you received a property tax, your levy's gone as well. Okay. So it's not just farmers. I think these are some of the things that you might hear on the one-sided media that are good talking points to get out there that try to divide people that are farmers and that are living in communities that don't farm. But actually this levy goes away for every property owner. And I think I said that at the beginning, anyone that owns property has that levy now taken off. And we are funding with the same amount of money out of the general fund, plus an additional $10 million. So I guess I'm confused. Am I not answering the question properly?
No, they just asked a broad question, so I think you answered it. So.
A couple things I would add to that is we rank, the last I saw, 15th highest in the nation in property taxes, and we're one of 2 states that funded mental health and offer property taxes. When you look at your property tax bill, you look at the line items of where your money is going. it all kind of makes sense, and then all of a sudden you get to the mental health one, and it's like, why is that there? I think most people are with that. And so, but still, at the end of the day, when it comes, 15th highest in the nation in property taxes, we can do better. That helps everybody. Having mental health in the general fund, everybody has skin in the game, and I think it's just
Yeah,
makes
I
sense.
think that if we are committed to funding mental health properly, I don't think it should matter where it comes from. Not only that, but, you know, really to help Fort Dodge, you know, Representative Meyer has been working on this. We probably need beds here in Fort Dodge. You know, we need a facility, you know, and this additional $10 million, or if there's other COVID money we can use, or whatever there qualifies, you know, I would be the first one to vote, let's put a mental health beds in Fort Dodge. That would help Fort Dodge, but it has nothing to do with farmers and property taxes.
Thank you.
I don't know, Ann.
Hey,
And then I'll just, real quick, I live in the city, within city limits. We have a property tax, we have the same mental health property tax levy in the city, so we're going to benefit from that as well.
Actually, there are owners of homes in Fort Dodge that pay more in property taxes than a small farmer would pay.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't know if anybody understands that or not, but there are some pretty nice homes in Fort Dodge, and I would probably say they probably pay more or as much as 40 acres of farmland, probably more.
Okay, thank you. Have a question for Representative Meyer. What happened to your bill on using hands-free electronic devices while driving?
That died in the House.
You're supposed to say it went out the window.
And for many different reasons. Everyone had a different reason, and I'm very discouraged about that. But we had one member in our caucus that was, and I've talked to the minority party about this too. They had the same issue come up in their caucus. Some people think that is a way, an extra way to give police a reason to pull over minorities.
Okay.
And so that was one of the reasons. One of the reasons was I don't think the police should be looking in our cars and seeing what we're doing. I think this is a tax on people who drive. I can't believe all of the reasons that came out when this. I was shocked. I literally was shocked when I thought this was going to be an easy bill that I explained in caucus, and it ended up being well over hour and 15. I want to say it's not going to be completely dead, although I did travel with two other legislators to an event the other night. It was Representative Best and Representative Worthen, and we are the three in the club that have, over the past 6 years, tried to get that bill passed.
Well, persistence pays, maybe, so thank
and
you.
So I hope that works. The one thing I want to say about that is if you don't wear your seatbelt, that's on you. If you get in an accident, you're going to be thrown from the car and you're hurting yourself. If you're looking at your phone or watching videos or going through your email, you have the potential of hurting someone innocent who is following all the rules. And that's why I think it's so important that we
Thank you very
pass
much.
that.
Okay, what would you see, what measure passed during the 2021 session will have the most impact, immediate impact on our residents? What will have the most immediate impact on our residents?
I'll start with that one. I'm going to say the telehealth parity bill because that has already had a big impact on our residents in the state, and it has increased access to mental health visits.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. I thought that telehealth is going to be and is going to be big for us. The only downside of that, I just hope that doesn't detour us from getting doctors in our area, because it's easier now to get service through telehealth. But that would be my my worry about that, but I do believe that the parity is something that is going to help, our rural areas quite a bit.
Thank you.
Actually, I would have to say, I actually think the Back to Blue bill, I think the law enforcement has been hurting lately. The respect for law and order, I think, has decreased tremendously in the past few years, and I think the Back to Blue bill is going to bring back confidence. It's going to just give all of our policemen an instant boost of encouragement that I think they desperately need, and yeah, I would say that bill.
Thank you very much.
Can I tack on to that?
Sure, just real quick.
I agree with that as well, because talking to law enforcement in the county, the sheriffs, they've had, and Fort Dodge, they've had openings for classes, and they can take 20, I believe, and they've had one candidate that fit the bill to get in, and we need police. We need to show them that we support them. Who's going to go into an unsafe job where there's no support for you?
Thank you. Okay, this is a kind of a general question about the Army and Air National Guard. Were there any legislation affecting either one of these entities in Iowa, or anything being worked on for the future, like encouraging recruitment or for building new facilities or improving facilities? So anything looking at in the future for the Guard?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. Nope. Okay.
That doesn't mean there isn't, but
Right.
it's just that we're not aware of.
Okay, just a general question. And then this is a kind of a long question that someone actually printed out. So I think I wanted to wait because it's more of a national issue. But it says, I believe we have a right to know where our elected officials stand on the issue of Trump's claims of widespread voter fraud that cost him the election. While this is a federal issue, it has become a state issue as many states have passed election laws that seem to be closely related to the claim of widespread election fraud in the 2020 election. Trump says it's a fact and he should be the president. Liz Cheney says no, it's a big lie and it's damaging the country and the party. Where do each of you stand on this issue, and what do you feel, or are you willing to make a strong statement supporting either side, Liz Cheney or Mr. Trump? And it's a federal issue, but it does have some state implications, so I don't know who would like to start with that.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think it's a very important question. In politics, there's this constant whirlwind of spin, and to me, spin is lying. I don't care which direction it goes, and the truth will set you free. And so as legislators, we got to get to the truth on every issue and illuminate it and put light on that. And that cuts the smoke, that tampers down emotions. And I'll never forget the election bill debate. One side thinks that there's no fraud. The other side thinks there's all kinds of fraud. The reality is there's some fraud. And I sat down with the Secretary of State's attorney, and I looked at some of the cases. And my big question going into next year is, why are some of these cases not getting prosecuted? I know that there's county attorneys have a lot of latitude into what they can investigate, and county attorneys are already overwhelmed with a lot of work as it is. I can see why in some of these cases that they don't prosecute, but that's what's really going to end this debate. And I would like to see something. I'm still a freshman, so I come up with these random ideas. But I would like to see after an election that we reveal the number of potential fraud cases that have been brought forth to the Secretary of State, and so that the citizens know exactly what's happening. And so all this fear-mongering will go away. Again, being this is a federal thing, I sure love the Electoral College. If widespread voter fraud happens in California, that's not going to change the will of the American people. And so the question is was there enough fraud in enough states to switch to manipulate the Electoral College? And the older I get, I see the value of that. And any politician that says we need to get rid of the Electoral College, he should not be running for office. That's the thing that's protecting us more than anything right now, is that Electoral College.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Senator?
personally, I feel that everybody's entitled to their own opinion on what happened or or what didn't happen. And it's my feeling that, there's a process, and the process currently is playing out. We've got 2, 3, 4, 5 states that are going through audits right now. I'd say let them go. Let the audits go. And if it shows something that needs correcting, or that there was massive or no fraud or whatever, then let's let the people of the United States know. If there was fraud in certain states and it did change the outcome of the election, if that happened, then that silenced Iowa voters. And so Iowa should be in favor of making sure that we get to the bottom of the accusations that are being made. If not, then I don't think we're truthful in our election process. But what we did, and just to show you a little bit, and all of you can see this when you watch the news, how politicized this entire thing is. If you look at Georgia, and they pull the All-Star game from Georgia, whose laws are a lot like ours that we've already passed, and they move it to a state that is more restrictive than Georgia, Colorado. And so don't tell me it's because they're less restrictive. They're doing it because it's a political ploy. Everything's political. That's the way it works. And that's what gets people to listen. Nobody knew that Georgia was less restrictive after they passed their laws than Colorado was, or the actual state that President Biden is in is the most restrictive state in the United States for voting. All we're doing is asking that we have fair elections, we make it easier to vote and harder to cheat. And the rhetoric on the floor every time in the last 4 years that we've passed election reform, which this wasn't our first bill that we passed this year, we've passed 2 or 3 in the past 4 years. And every time the other side will complain that we're going to suppress the vote. They're going to suppress the vote. And I brought this up, and I thought it's kind of interesting, because I was on my way down to the State House, and I could go get vaccinated at Ames High School, but I had to bring my driver's license and form of ID, and I had to bring a parent or whatever along. But yet, I can go vote without it? So I have to get vaccinated? So really what you're telling me then, people that the Democrats are worried about that don't have IDs can't get shots. So I thought, well, that's kind of odd. They want to kill people, because that's what COVID does, kills people, but they need an ID, and they can't get an ID apparently because they can't get one to vote, so they can't get a shot. See, that's the type of hypocrisy that we deal with, and it's just frustrating. It just frustrates the heck out of me. But see, I don't know if I'm the only one that sees it, or if everyone out here can see it as well, because it's those type of things that just frustrate me. Well, going back to the original story, is that every time we have increased made our voting laws better in the state of Iowa, every single time we've had record turnouts. Record turnouts. So the old tired rhetoric of it's going to suppress vote, they use it every time, every year, all the time, fails every single time. And sooner or later, if that was me, I would stop using the rhetoric, but it sounds like it's just a playbook that they keep going back to. But I just want to tell you that our goal is not to suppress vote. Our goal is to make sure that everyone in this room's vote counts. It counts because it's fair, it's easy to vote, and it's hard to cheat. And then that's what we're after with our voting laws.
And one thing with constructive criticism on the bill that I've seen that I am going to, is a concern in my mind, this is going down a rabbit trail off the main question, but I do wish that, my personal opinion, that we could mail out absentee voting ballots a week prior to in-person. I think that would save money. Each absentee ballot costs the taxpayer $4 a ballot. And I guess as time goes forward, I'm going to keep an eye on that. and I think that would lessen the workload on our auditors. They do such a great job, and so going forward, that's my only concern with the education bill, or the election
Thank
bill.
you. Representative Meyer?
Yep. I will just address the Iowa election bill. I completely support it. I do feel that we need voter ID. I think we did need to tighten up the timeline, and we tightened it to 20 days, down from 29. I think that that's perfectly reasonable. Going back to the original question when we're talking about the national talk.
Yep.
Look, I don't want any fraud. I don't think there should be one instance of fraud, just like both senators said. But people are concerned, well, if all these Republicans won, why didn't Trump win? You know what? I supported President Trump. I supported him through both elections. In fact, I caucused for him when he first came in 2016. I know people who are Republicans and didn't vote for Trump in Iowa. So I'm sure that that's happened throughout the country. I believe I believe there was some fraud in the election, but I believe that the fraud that was there would not change the outcome. Regardless, I think all fraud should be investigated because none of it should be tolerated.
Thank you.
Because one instance of fraud erases one other person's vote, and that's not fair.
Thank you very much. We've got just a few minutes left, and I've got one last question, unless somebody wants to submit one or two more. This is more broad and related to natural resources and the deer population. Have you, or do you look at the legislature working on modifying existing deer hunting, opportunities in Iowa due to the overpopulation of deer?
This would be a Jesse question.
Well, there's Senator Rosenboom. He had a bill. I like the nickname of it. It was the Deer Slayer bill, but it goes to address this, where it would do a very intense survey as far as the deer population in Iowa and what's been happening, and there'd be a lot of different players at the table: the DOT, the DNR, Iowa State, and to take a thorough look at that. I really loved that portion of the bill. His bill would also add a depredation season to the end of at the end of late muzzleloader season, to that if a certain county didn't use up all of its tags that the DNR had allotted for that season, then there would be depredation tags that would be available to then fill what needed to be done to control the population in that particular county. So it I thought it was a very common sense bill. I don't think it might have came out of the Senate, but I could see that moving pretty quickly next session out of both chambers.
Thank you. Representative Meyer, any thoughts?
I'd just like to add something. I've heard about in-city deer population, and it does seem to be out of control. I've been in conversations with Matt Cosgrove with Webster County Conservation, and he has assured me that he's in conversations with the city, and they're looking at an in-city hunt at some point.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, now it's time for closing comments. We appreciate those participating from here in the audience and those watching online. We'll give each of you a 2-minute opportunity to close. And so, Tim, we can start with you and finish with Dan.
No, I just want to take a second just to thank everyone again, Growth Alliance as well as Iowa Central and media that is here as well. And we are, at least I can speak for myself, but these guys too, we're so blessed to be in Iowa. I think the more that we look around us and in the other states, the leadership that we have, as well as the people of Iowa, if there's ever a problem or if there's ever a crisis, it's so great to have a community or friends or people that come together and give up their time and their talents as well as their treasures, and they help their neighbor through. And I think that's the thing that Iowa forgets to tout about is that in so many of these other states and larger cities, people don't even know their neighbors. They don't even know who lives across from them in the hall. We find that out in our condo, when we're down there during session, that, I don't even really know people that live 3 feet away from me. And it's so nice to be in communities in the state of Iowa, in the smaller rural areas, that if something happens, you have people that come and help that don't even know you and are truly care. They truly care about you. So, like I said, we're blessed to be here. We're blessed to serve all of you in the Iowa Senate and the House, and we look forward to continuing to get questions at our Eggs and Issues, as well as emails and phone calls. Just continue to throw them our way, and we'll do our best to answer or to help. So thank you.
Thank you. Senator Green?
Thank you, everybody, for coming, and thank you so much for putting on these forums. They're so important, and it's been truly an honor. It's my first year, and I've learned so much, and so thanks for putting up with me, guys. And but what's interesting with this is what my eyes are on in the off season is the importance of civic organizations, and I think we all have different opinions on what the role of government is. We all have different opinions on what the role of the individual is. And to me, the civic organizations are kind of the oil that keeps everything moving in our society. And I think COVID has revealed a lot of weaknesses in our economy, weaknesses in our in ourselves. But as time has gone on here, I see more and more clearly that I think we need to pay closer attention to our civic organizations. That's where Democrats and Republicans come together. That's where you can look each other in the eye and ask each other what's going on in your life, what are your issues, is there something I can do to help you? And that's where the human component comes back in, and I absolutely pray that there is a revival in our civic organizations. After World War II, we saw a huge spike in civic organizations. It was a natural response to fear, a natural response to something that so many people had never seen before. I don't want to compare COVID to World War II, but that was something that we've never seen before. It stretched our society in ways that we've never seen in our generation. And so I think the proper response is to get active in the civic organizations, appreciate them, fund them, and thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Representative Meyer?
Thanks very much, Jim, for hosting again after a rough week. Thanks to the Growth Alliance. I just want to say I'm honored to serve as well. It is even though we are a part-time legislature, this is a full-year job. We are all taking emails, phone calls, meetings all year round. I appreciate everyone who reaches out with questions, and that's how we start to develop solutions for problems that are out there. So I want to thank everyone.
Thank you all very much, and thank you for watching and participating here. It's been an honor to work with you guys this year in the session. You've been very responsive, and you've been that for our region, I think, and we're very lucky to have you. So on behalf of the Growth Alliance and Iowa Central, thank you for joining us, and thanks for
Jim.
coming.